Hello and welcome to We're Winging It, the Formula One podcast. I'm your host, Ellie, and I'm joined by my co-host, Harry.
Hello.
And our other co-host, Kieran.
Hello.
We were in the Austrian hills to the sound of Formula One. Kieran, this was perhaps one of the more interesting races we've had this season. Did you enjoy it?
I did. I was just saying before we started recording. Firstly, Ellie, great Sound of Music reference. I enjoyed that. I think it was the best, and we'll get more into it. It was the best McLaren battle we've seen all year. So on that context, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's a good race.
Harry, I think, was less of a fan, and we'll get into it later. But the turn one incident, we did end up. I think we got a message. A little message about that, and I don't think Harry was too happy about it.
No, just some people who think they're too smart for their own good. Think they're funny, just sending messages, gloating. People who are fake fans. They pretend to be fans, but they never really watch the race, and they think it's funny when a driver's out of the race who could actually, make the race a bit more interesting in that kind of bottom of the front runners. But no, all joking aside, it was a shame that Max went out in the first lap, but I had a great time with this race. I thought it was a really good one, so I was still happy.
Oh, well, way to be mature about it.
Yeah. Well, I see. Very grown up.
Yeah. That's me accepting that the title fight for Max is well and truly over.
Yeah.
It was already, but now it's dead.
Yeah.
You're at the acceptance stage of grief at this point.
Yeah. Bless him. We'll go to qualifying first. Actually, I'm going to go back on what I just said. I'm going to go to free practice 1. We had a McLaren switcheroo. I think is it 4 sessions a year they have to have a junior driver in the seat to give people a bit more experience in Formula One, and they had in there an Irish young lad, Alex Dunn, I believe, and he did very well. He topped the timing. He was fastest in the high speed corners, I believe. Yeah, I think everyone was quite impressed with him. He's in F2 this year, and I think he's impressing. So one to look out for. Is the first Irish person to take a seat in Formula One for quite a long time. So it
was nice as well that McLaren didn't just spam it in at the end of the year like most teams do, and it gets to Abu Dhabi and every single team on the grid is doing it because they've forgotten throughout the year to put the juniors in.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe this is a track that really suits Norris, and he always goes well, that maybe they thought he's not going to need it as much as other tracks, so fair enough.
Yeah, I think that probably plays into it. But we'll get into qualifying now, where Norris definitely did shine. But we had some disappointing results for the Williams. So Sainz really is struggling at the moment. And he couldn't get out of Q1, which we've been seeing, a bit more recently. He has been struggling with it. Harry, do you think that it's just something with the car as opposed to with him?
I think is it 3 Q1 exits in a row, I think, for Sainz. So, yeah, I mean, I think I've been a bit more positive on him than you guys have, but I don't know. There always seems to be something wrong with the car, like there always seems to be that involved. You can't deny that Albon's performing better, and that gap is biggest in qualifying. I mean, his race pace has been better, Sainz, but it's a real shame. I mean, terrible weekend for the Williams in general, but it's just every week it's like, you think they're gonna get it back together, and then it's starting to slip away. I mean, they're still 5th in the constructors, but if they keep going like this, they'll be at risk of losing that, and that'd be a real shame.
Yeah, because they're only 10 or 20 points maybe now, so a string of good results from the teams around them, and that it tips it over. So yeah, especially seeing like the Racing Bulls have had some really good results recently. It won't be long until they're overtaking them. Yeah, or even the Sauber. Hulkenberg.
Yeah, I mean,
yes, I was going to say
Hulkenberg down in P20 for the race. for qualifying, and he obviously made it up in the race. But Harry, I think you have an interesting point about Hulkenberg.
Yeah, so I saw a great stat about him because obviously everyone was, we're a fan of him on the podcast, but everyone was really hyping him up online and stuff afterwards. And I saw this really interesting stat to put into context, sort of his performance and also the Red Bulls. Since Monza last year, so about a year's worth of racing, Hulkenberg has scored 20 points, which pretty decent for being a sort of back market team.
Yep.
The second Red Bull seat, in that same amount of time, with all three drivers, Tsunoda, Lawson, and Perez combined, have scored 20 points. So
that's insane.
And
I mean that sort of puts into perspective the difficulties.
When in the Red Bull, right? That doesn't include Tsunoda and Lawson's points.
That's in the Red Bull. Yeah. So
that's
sort of
that's
basically one Red Bull car
stat.
versus one of Hulkenberg and the Sauber. But then the three different drivers cycling in to see, if that performance is going to improve, and clearly it hasn't. But that suggests a car problem. But.
And Tsunoda was also out in Q1 this time out, and as you say, it is maybe more of a car problem because Max says as well. Max is very vocal, saying they're not all terrible drivers. There is and a large element of this is the car being very, very difficult to drive for anyone that isn't Max, basically. We also saw in qualifying Behrman out-qualifying his teammate Ocon, which we're seeing a bit more. I think Behrman's kind of stepped in and done quite well, but Bortoletto and Lawson both out-qualified their teammates, which isn't something we've been seeing particularly often, especially with how dominant Hadjar has been in that Racing Bull seat.
Yeah, that's. I think it's taken Lawson a bit of time to. I don't want to say warm up, but he's had a tumultuous start to his season, and I really think he's turned a corner in the last couple of races. He's been looking really good lately, and if him and Hadjar have a bit of healthy competition amongst rookies, nothing but positive, I think, for Racing Bulls. And it's just so interesting what life looks like at the Racing Bulls versus Red Bull these days. With Yuki obviously out in Q1 again. It just can't be fun to be in the Red Bull garage this weekend.
No,
I can imagine.
I think the Racing Bull's a much easier car to drive, but maybe if you're able to extract the most out of it as Max can, the Red Bull's obviously a quicker car. It's just much more difficult to drive it to begin with, which I guess is why they're struggling. Because Max.
But then,
is
it truly a good car? Is it truly a good car if it's basically impossible to get the performance out of it unless you're one person on the planet?
But then I think we're seeing that this year, aren't we? We're seeing they're not the fastest car, but they might not even be the second fastest car, and in some races they're not even the third fastest car. Obviously sometimes there's been maybe one race this year where they have been, but overall, and it's a team sport, and the constructors is how the money is decided, and as a team they aren't doing very well because it's a car that's very difficult to drive. So I think we are seeing that maybe it isn't a good car, or maybe it's a good car, not a great car. It depends where you draw the line. For them, for the standards of Red Bull, you would have to say it's not a good car. But if Haas had that car, maybe we'd say, oh, that was a good car.
Maybe like if it was a really difficult to, because the thing is, it's we say like, oh, it's difficult for any driver that's not Max, but the truth is it's difficult even for Max. Like, he's not happy. He's not been happy the whole season. He wasn't happy at the end of last season. He is just able to extract more. Like you say, that's a good point. If this was the Haas, and you had a great driver in that, I don't know, a rookie and Ocon, I don't know, maybe, but say Ocon he was great with that kind of car and he could extract the most out of it, but say Behrman was really suffering, we'd probably say, well, that's a gamble worth taking, because having one driver that can fight with that car and drag it up the field and get some good points is worth it. But when you expect the Red Bulls to be fighting at the front, yeah, that doesn't work, does it? It's not the strategy to go. And I think they just got to wait the clock out, and reset next season and
Yeah.
whole new design philosophy.
Yeah.
And this is a write-off.
Obviously, Austria is the fastest lap. It's not the it's not like the shortest one, but it's the one that takes the least amount of time to get around. With pole going, what was it, 1:03.9 or something like that. And in
1:03.9.
In Q1, because obviously it's a short lap time, all of the drivers were in 1 second of one another. All 20 drivers, which isn't something we see ever really. So it's interesting. Yes, obviously the track being shorter is a part of it, but also the teams are genuinely just a bit closer together this year.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's natural as you come towards the end of a design cycle, that like ultimately within a set of regulations there might well be a fastest way to do something, and eventually all the teams kind of converge on it. Like, as much as some teams are a lot better off financially than others, I think when you have some of the best engineers in the world, they all kind of come to the same conclusion after, 3 years now?
Yeah.
So I think that is natural.
And I think,
and like you say, on a short track like this, it's kind of compounded.
The cost cap,
true.
I think hopefully, especially with the next set of regulations, with everybody developing, having the cost cap in the whole time whilst we're in this completely new iteration of car, hopefully that will see the teams a bit closer together to begin with. We'll see. But speaking of, sorry, Harry.
So I just want to say, I mean, that is the hope, and I think that's what the design is for. But I was thinking, like, what if, say, the McLarens or whatever, they nail the regulations, everyone else is really far behind, but then your bigger teams who maybe would be able to close that gap a bit quicker because they could overspend and really put that work into to trying out different stuff and catching up and replacing parts. Maybe they can't because of the cost cap, and therefore that gap stays for longer. Maybe.
Yeah,
so it'll be interesting to see which way
it kind of crystallizes your position at the start of the year a bit more, because you can't afford to just develop as much.
That is an interesting thought, point. Yeah. So Norris ended up obviously qualifying. It was it half a second up from Leclerc, and then 0.6 from Piastri. Part of that was because there was a yellow flag affecting some people's final runs. But either way, I don't think anyone was going to pip him, because he went even quicker.
No chance.
Than his provisional pole. So I know we say that this is a track that suits him, he always performs, but coming off the back of Canada, I think we can't overstate how important that lap was.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think you can't fault him this weekend. And I mean, it wasn't just squeaking pole. It wasn't just a good performance. We will never really know if Piastri it really would just be Piastri, but I don't think anyone's seriously questioning it. I mean, that was a stunning performance and a great lap. So a big comeback, and he needed it.
Yeah,
he definitely needed it
massively, because we always talk about momentum, and maybe we would obviously still have to favour Piastri at this point, but he has been put. If you take out Canada as an anomaly, I would say the last 4 races, Norris had been getting better and improving. But if he's the driver that we know him to be, mistake prone, he'll have to be even better to be able to be in with a shot of winning. But we move on to the race. This was the first time, as Kieran touched on, that we've seen them properly race one another. Harry, I know obviously your man was out of the fight, but you must have enjoyed this.
Your man.
Yeah, I mean, it really was 20 laps within 1 second, basically. And, obviously they had that one major battle where Piastri manages to take Norris. And obviously this is where I was on the edge of my seat thinking, I prefer Piastri. I sort of want Piastri to win, but for this race I really was hoping Lando would win, because it keeps the momentum going, it keeps it interesting, it keeps the gap close, And I think Lando Norris at the start of the season, even, or Lando Norris at the last season, would have panicked. But you could just tell he was calm. He lets Piastri does it. He doesn't fight it too hard. He's behind at the DRS line and uses that to overtake again. Nice, clean racing from both of them. And really, really impressed with Norris there. I mean, he did everything he needed to do to keep Piastri behind. And
yeah, it was clever. It was clever
great.
Racing.
Yeah, it was good. It's some of the best racecraft we've seen from him. Not that he's not capable of it, but like probably this year, some of the best racecraft we've seen from him. Not panicking, retaking after losing a place, like staying calm. Someone's on him the whole time, keeping calm under pressure. Even when Oscar nearly went into the back of him with that lockup, he kept it cool, and it paid off for him in the end, didn't it?
So obviously, as you just said, so it was right at the end of the first stint. Oscar had a big lockup and nearly took Lando out, and then I think the team pitted Lando the next lap, and went on the radio to Oscar saying, "Don't go for moves like that," because I think
it was like, we can't do that.
I think for something like that, you know, when we think about Canada, that was Lando's fault and it only affected Lando, whereas had Oscar have hit Lando and then they both went out of the race, or one of them went out of the race, it would have massive championship implications now, you know.
Big time.
So I think that's what would cause problems at the team. I think what we saw in Canada wasn't because Oscar was like, "Oh well, you mugged yourself off, I'm great," but I think something where one of them hits the other one and then they both crash out, like we saw it with Hamilton and Rosberg, it would happen. Like that's what causes the issue. I think is when they're both out.
Yeah.
I mean, I did see,
and they have a decent advantage in the championship at this point, but you still can't be affording to double DNF, can you?
I saw someone sort of describing a similar Hamilton Rosberg situation, and you know, someone was like hyping it up and thinking that might happen. But I saw someone else put it like Norris is too inwardly critical and self-critical, and Piastri is sort of too chill and outwardly chill as well. Doesn't like the drama as much. That it probably wouldn't be too spectacular. Like there might be some inner working team drama that behind closed doors, and I'm sure they'd voice their displeasure. But you know, I think a little bit of us would hope for some sparks and a bit of a public fight, but maybe not too likely.
Formula One drivers, I think, are smarter than they used to be, and I think the smart thing to do is to keep your emotions in check and to play your cards close to your chest. And I think, especially with the age of like social media, and they're a
lot more media trained.
They're a lot more media trained now. There's so much more media commitment, and they have like cameras shoved in them from when they get to the track on a Thursday to when they leave on a Sunday, especially if you're in the racing balls and they're making constant TikToks. So I think that the drivers are a bit more smart about how they conduct themselves, because I think they're much more aware of the fact that they're on camera all the time.
You don't think we'd get a driver walking to another driver's garage and trying to punch them?
Well, I know. I mean, we've seen that definitely with like Max and Ocon. And potentially we would see that with like George and Max.
If that leads us nicely on to Max's incident then, with Kimi on lap 1, I was surprised how calm he was getting out of that car, because he was just torpedoed in the side. He was just torpedoed. Nothing. He wasn't even in a race with Antonelli at that point. Antonelli was. No.
He was 3 cars back.
He messed up big time.
He came out of nowhere.
Yeah, like it wasn't even like he was defending Antonelli. Antonelli just came out of nowhere and took him out of the race. I was surprised how relatively calm Max seemed at that point. Getting out of the car.
I mean, Antonelli went over to him immediately and said, "I'm sorry," and maybe the fact that he is just a kid played some bearing on it, because had a 27-year-old Max Verstappen gone and yelled in a 17, 18-year-old's face, the stories would have been a bit different.
Yeah, I don't
know about that. I mean, I think if you're good enough, you're old enough. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're an F1 driver on the track, it's fair game to react however you want to react, like under the pressures of it. I don't think Max was any more. Well, maybe he was a bit more pragmatic getting out of the car, thinking this is just a young kid. I think he probably knew it was an absolute mistake and not a bad move. It was just a total misjudgment and bad bit of driving that happens every now and again, that he was probably okay with it on that context.
And I think that people have been talking about him being in a championship battle, but I think he would have had to be the luckiest driver in the world this year to have had a shot at the drivers. And so maybe, had that happened last year, he would have reacted differently because he was the favourite for the championship. But now it's less of a big deal, and maybe he's a bit checked out of Red Bull and the way he knows the team aren't going to win the constructors. He thinks he's not going to win the drivers. There's less at stake, and I guess maybe that is a part of his reaction, because we've not seen a Max who has nothing to win for quite a long time, since 2017
for a while,
2018.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
So I think it's you get a similar reaction from other people crashing, back markers. You'd be frustrated. The first radio message might be a bit frustrated. By the time you're out of the car and you're chatting, it's a racing incident. I mean, they happen, don't they? Especially first lap ones. So yeah, like Ellie said, as soon as the
especially lap one
out of it, it becomes a one race thing, and you just move on. You focus on the next one. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Speaking of focusing on the next one, Sauber, double points. Harry, we're going to get open another bottle for you, because you're definitely on bottle number 2 of apple sours at this point. So it was a good weekend all round for Sauber.
I'm in trouble.
So obviously,
big trouble.
Hulkenberg qualified P20, but climbed up and finished in the points, which was a fantastic drive from him, but overshadowed a little bit by Bortoletto finishing 8th and getting his first points ever. So all around, I would say a really good weekend for Sauber, and a team that's really, the last 3 races, really starting to kick on a bit, as much as a backmarker team can.
No, they've been doing. I mean, at the start of the season, they were our wooden spoon team that we thought wouldn't pick up a single point, maybe. So compared to that, if that's the metric that was going into the season, they're flying. If you think about it in that sense, they're doing really well. So I'm sure they'll be really happy as a team with where they are compared to where they probably thought they'd be at the start of the year.
Especially with this year being a transition year for Sauber, we know that they're turning to Audi next year. So this year is a bit of a placeholder of, we're still Sauber, but all of the workings behind the scenes are for an Audi team next year. So bit of an odd year for the team, but they're doing better than I think we all thought. And speaking of people who did worse than we thought, the Mercedes are struggling in the heat even more than we are. Harry, were you surprised by how bad they were?
No, I mean we've seen them be poor in the heat, and I think with the track temperature as high as it was, that was kind of expected. So placing them around the kind of sort of gap between the McLarens and Ferraris, and then another gap between the Red Bulls and the Mercedes, it's kind of where I expected. I mean it was a decent chunk between Hamilton and Russell at the end, but not too surprising. We've seen that Mercedes be so variable on its pace, but because that gap between those sort of top couple teams in the back, they still end up around that kind of 5th, 6th, 7th position. So not too surprising. And I think Russell in 5th was the best they could hope for. So he shouldn't be too ashamed with that.
And news just in, having just checked the weather forecast, it's going to be It's going to be a bit cloudy in Silverstone. Potential for rain, and it's going to be a lot cooler than it was this weekend. So that could swing into Mercedes' favour. It could bring the teams a bit closer together. I think the Ferrari does it better in the heat, so maybe they'll drop off a bit. But the McLarens, who seem to have a great advantage with their tyres when it's hot, they might not have such a big pace advantage, and it's a circuit that will maybe favour other teams like Red Bull as well. So it'll be interesting. Hopefully it's a close race.
Yeah.
Yeah, rain would be
Yeah,
very
I mean,
good.
Silverstone always seems to produce... Yeah, rain would really spice it up. I think Silverstone always produces some good racing. I mean, I know maybe we're biased as British F1 fans, but a bit of rain never hurts. So if it does rain, or even if it's just intermittent conditions, like a bit of quite cloudy, a few showers here and there, that'd really spice it up, I think.
I love
That'd be the
variable.
best, really, yeah.
When, news just in, Pete from 3 fields away says it's raining.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I hope we have a bit of random people standing in fields with their palms upturned. I like that. And I like it when they always zoom in on the clouds coming over, like, oh, that was dark.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Ooh,
Or when the
scary.
first radio message comes in to whoever it is saying, we expect rain in 10 minutes, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, rain. Oh,
I love that moment.
yeah. So I do enjoy a wet race. So it could be wet in the afternoon, but it might not be. We don't know. It's too far out really to know for sure. And sometimes it will go around the circuit and sometimes it will hit it. So, we'll have to wait and see. But I'll be doing a rain dance the rest of the
British
week.
weather, after all, you can't predict it.
Yeah. So we said that Ferrari have done well this weekend in Austria, but I think that the Ferrari's performance is even greater when Mercedes and Red Bull struggled. Like, Red Bull scored no points this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ferrari, their
Horrific
place
weekend.
in the championship, like, that does wonders.
Big time.
Yeah,
I think
they're really going
Max
for
not
second.
finishing. I mean, yeah, I think with Red Bull struggling, if Max can't get any points from even if he does, I just don't think if they finish 3rd and 4th this week, Max can't compete with that himself no matter what he does.
Yeah.
With Tsunoda going pointless each week, I think it's coming around for Ferrari slowly but surely. I think they obviously had a rough start to the season, probably a bit disappointing compared to people's expectations. But they're getting there. Lewis, I think, hopefully he's looking like he's turned a bit of a corner. He seems in better spirits, at least this weekend. Seemed quite happy with his qualifying, quite happy with P4. And, 3rd and 4th behind the 2 McLarens is probably as good as any team that isn't a McLaren can expect most weeks these days. So they'll be really happy with this weekend, I think.
And I think so Ferrari are 1 point ahead of Mercedes now, but they seem to have completely opposite strengths. And it seems to be when one's quick, the other's slow, when one's slow, the other's quick, which is going to make a really interesting season as the second half plays out, seeing how, I think the Ferrari are going to suit 5 tracks, but they're going to suit 7 tracks, and trying to see, like, where we think they'll be better. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out with them.
That's a really good point, actually, yeah. Really, I don't think we've seen 2 top teams have that kind of situation before where they're so on and off, like in such dramatic ways, and they also then be opposite each other week in, week out. It is really interesting to track, I think.
A team that's very much off at the moment is Williams, unfortunately. Albon's had 3 consecutive DNFs, so obviously he had 2 back-to-back for the same power unit issue. I didn't catch what this one was for. Carlos Sainz struggled to get away. His brakes were on fire. It was a weekend to forget for them.
Yeah, really bad.
Sainz didn't even see the start, really, did he?
Yeah. It must be hurting you,
That was
Harry.
bizarre as well, seeing that, where they had to have bought the start and all that.
Their P5, as you predicted, might be under threat soon. Are you starting to get worried, Harry?
You know what? I'm a little bit worried, but they have had pace, so I'm hoping. And Albon before his DNF was still right up there in the points. So I'm hoping the gulf just on pace between sort of your Aston Martin and the Racing Bulls over the season will be enough.
They seem
I think
to have
the
the pace.
Yeah, exactly. They've got the pace. I mean, it's just the reliability is 3 in a row, especially in this era where reliability has been really quite good amongst the teams. Kind of worrying. And if you've got that
Yeah.
paired with a second driver who's struggling, I mean that's the kind of thing that'll lose you P5. So
But then Sainz in the race, it wasn't
it's gonna
even
cost
his
him.
fault. You know, he didn't qualify well, but the actual race, there was nothing he could have done about that to end up with no points
No,
for
but he
William.
yeah.
You know,
didn't even start it.
yeah, a real disappointment for them. Alonso has kind of turned it around a bit. Points again, and we also said Lawson P6, so 2 good results for the teams in and around potential battle.
Great result for
Williams.
Lawson. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Lawson was on like 4 points.
It just goes to show it just goes to show that one well-placed finish, maybe a few front runners DNF, means so much to these teams, because we spoke about what a great performance it was by Bortoletto and Hulkenberg, double points finish, but Lawson finishing, I think it was P6,
6, yeah,
get 8 points, and they get 4 points and 2 points, 6 points. So he, for the Racing Bulls, scores more points himself than those two drivers together. So it just goes to show maximising those opportunities where maybe a couple of front runners, like, you know, Verstappen and Antonelli taking themselves out, is so crucial for those mid-table teams to put some points on the board.
yeah. And Alonso was
So
above them
they'll
as
keep
well.
going for it, I assume.
No, Albon was running above them.
Oh, yeah.
I said so. We should go on now to driver of the day. Harry, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, I was just thinking about this. I think I will. I don't think. I'm trying to predict what you guys will go for and then do something different. But I don't think either of you will give it to the Kiwi. So I'm going to say Lawson. Such a rough start to the season, and a real hit to his sort of standing, I suppose, having not had much racing before, to then talk it up real big, you know, flipping off Perez and then coming in and out within 6 races. It's nice to see that confidence return and some actual good results on track. So yeah, P6 for Lawson. You know, I mean, yes, helped by some DNFs, but maximizing points where you can is the name of the game for these teams. So
yeah, you got to be in it to win it. Yeah.
Yeah. And Kieran, your
and held off Alonso for a long time.
Kieran, your driver of the day.
Nice. Oh, I think for me, just because we saw not a different side to him, that's too dramatic, but we saw a side to Lando that we haven't seen in a few weeks. Some real determination and resolve to grind out a victory here. I'm going to give it to Lando for that victory, because he didn't just drive off into the sunset. He had to fight for it. He had to manage well. He had to manage the race well, and he did really well. So I think for the whole weekend, the whole performance, it's got to be Lando.
I am going to go rogue. We have been slamming the F1 driver of the day poll all year. It's made no sense. This week's, I believe, was Bortoletto.
It's made no sense.
I'm gonna give
sense.
I'm gonna give mine to Bortoletto. So I'm agreeing with the Formula One public for the first time this season, because they've been absolutely
first time all
ridiculous.
season.
And I'm gonna give it to Bortoletto. I think he deserved it. First points, and it was a weekend. He had a very strong weekend. Got into Q3. I think it's the first weekend people kind of sat up and took notice. I was saying last week on the podcast, I was saying he's the one that's flown under the radar the most for the rookies. I think maybe this is the weekend where he's gone,
definitely.
I'm here as well. So we should move on now to...
Yeah, it's probably his best weekend.
Yeah, well, he's his first point, so you can't really say anything other than that. But we'll move on now to grid news.
Exactly.
So we touched on the incident between Max and Antonelli. Antonelli carries over a 3-place grid penalty for Silverstone. So that is quite a big... We were saying... I mean, yeah, that was definitely his fault. But we were saying the other week about how a grid place penalty can be much more severe than a time penalty. So...
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting race for him to try and... He's going to have to try and qualify and stay out of the mess at turn 1, as we often see.
Yeah.
Yeah, better than he did this week anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose, what would you say 3-place grid penalty is equivalent to in time-wise?
Well, I mean,
Maybe
I
a
think
10-second?
I think it might be equivalent to like a 5. And if you don't serve a 5, then you get a 3 place grip penalty.
God, I would have given him by that logic, I feel like the crash being as bad as it was, I would probably given him a 10-second for that.
Yeah.
So I think 3, Mercedes might feel relatively well off with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of the standard, isn't it? When a driver does this kind of incident, but then is out of the race, I think 3 is pretty standard for what they give. So it was quite expected, and I mean, it's fair enough.
Part of the punishment is like you've crashed yourself out of the race.
Yeah, true.
So yeah, but 3
true, but then that has to be.
Yeah,
but it still has to be punished, I think, even if you don't finish, because then you might think it's worth the risk. Because if you get taken out, then at least you won't get punished for it. So I think they have to have a punishment, right? If you don't finish.
Yeah. But at least it's at a track you can kind of overtake, and if there's like variable weather conditions, he could still see his way up.
Points are on the
standings.
table, but it'll be harder.
Yeah. Speaking of things being on the table, George has laid it all out there and said that Mercedes are talking about Verstappen for a 2026 Mercedes seat. He seems to think, based on the way he's performed this season, his seat is a bit more comfortable than it would have been at the beginning of the season. And I think you'd have to agree with him. I think he's stepped up massively and his performances have been very good. But Harry, could you see a George Russell-Max Verstappen partnership working?
Yeah. Look, I know they don't get on well, really, but I don't think it's beyond saving, and I don't think they need to be chums. You know, if the team is not going to be right at the front as well, that does help. If you're not managing 2 drivers competing for a championship, I'd be really interesting to see Max in a different team against one of these other drivers, and the Russell, Leclerc, Norris kind of era.
He's never
to see how he stacks up against them and changing car, because it's really difficult.
I think since Max has been in his prime, as it were, he hasn't had a top quality teammate. So it would be interesting to see him.
No one on the level of Russell, at least.
Yeah, because Russell is a very good racer in his own right. I think, Hamilton, or other than 2016, he always did better than his teammates, and he had some very good teammates. Whereas Max, since he's been in his championship winning era, he hasn't had a challenge with a teammate. So it would be interesting, I think, were he in the same car as George, if they would be quite close together. I think it would. I think there'd be fireworks. I think it'd be interesting.
Yeah. No, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, the F1 script writers.
Yeah.
The F1 script writers really putting out the bag to put those together as teammates.
We were saying on the podcast before that you don't get teammates that properly hate each other these days. So it would be like, I feel like it'd be quite an old school partnership, with teammates.
Get a good little rivalry.
There's talk that some people are going to wait till 2027 before they decide on a long-term contract, because you don't want to tie yourself to a sinking ship,
That's why I'm less inclined to believe some of this stuff, because I'm like, there's rumors about the Mercedes engine being very good. I could also see, less likely than that, but I could see an Aston Martin move for Max, because there's connection there with Newey, connection there with Honda engines. But I don't know. You're taking a gamble, moving away from a team and environment that you do know, even though it's been a bit shaky. Risk for what? I mean, Max is the only driver.
And it's so revolved around him as well.
And anyone will take him in 2027. So I mean, you could gamble for 1 year contract and gamble twice. Move in 2027. But
Max has said he doesn't want to be in the sport forever. Everybody knows he has interest in other types of racing, other categories, and he has a newborn now. Might change his opinion. Maybe he wants to get another 1 or 2 championships before he leaves, and maybe he doesn't want to wait a year to see where that leads. But it's interesting, as you say. The world is his oyster, and I think any team would be foolish. I think other than maybe the McLaren with their lineup, I think any other team would be quite foolish not to take him.
Yeah.
I think in terms of him going to somewhere like an Aston Martin, I think that maybe present too much, like you say, given that he doesn't want to be in the sport forever, that might represent too much of a long-term project risk for him. Because I don't think he is worried. I don't think the way Hamilton was happy to but happy to come 5th or 6th for a year in Mercedes before the new regulations came in, that's what they promised him to step up to that next level. I don't see Max being the kind of guy that will just be happy with that. So I think Mercedes might well be his only option of a top team that has a seat that would take him on if McLaren aren't interested, which, I'm sure they're interested on a certain level, but they almost don't. If their car's going to be that dominant, they almost don't need Max, which is a crazy thing to say.
But they also have 2 drivers that are very well settled in the team and are performing very well. And I think if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think McLaren don't need to look elsewhere. I know that Max is an incredible driver, but I think that they have the strongest lineup on the grid as a team.
Yeah, as a duo.
Yeah. Speaking of strong lineups, we also like the Williams lineup. They're 2 drivers, but we're massive James Vowles fans on the podcast, and he signed a new long-term deal at Williams, which is just rewarding the step forward that they have taken. Obviously, they're struggling at the last few races, but this year they have taken a step forward, and he's being rewarded for that. So I think they're a real success story, and I think the new owners, the new investment, will want to see another step up in the new regulations. So I think they're backing him as the man to do that for them.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah.
The principle that we like. So he's doing good things, and I know he believes that they can be at the front fighting for championships. So I'd love for it to become true, really, just mostly because I think seeing him happy will be really nice.
Yeah.
And I like Albon. So
Yeah, I agree with that.
It'd be nice.
Yeah. He's definitely...
He deserves it. He's so open and honest as well in
Yeah.
a way that's really refreshing.
Yeah.
So I think it's a kind of model of a team principle that I think I'd like for him to succeed, for the sport to then be more open to that kind of guy where he's not afraid to talk technically and be open and honest about strategy and things like that. I think he's quite a breath of fresh air for me this year. So I think
100%.
For me, I'm happy about it.
Yeah. We've been talking him up the whole time he's been there, a couple of years now. So I'm glad to see him stay at Williams and try and build them back up. A British team. Next week we have the British Grand Prix. Kieran, give us your quick top 3.
Quick, right. Well, I think at this point, with the upgrades they brought to Austria and the clear pace it delivered them, you'd be silly not to predict another McLaren 1-2. I think Lando, home Grand Prix, riding high off of a really good result. I'll give him the win, I think. I think a pole and a win. Oscar, I think, will push him all the way. We'll see how it goes. Him in second. And then just because he's British, I'll give it to George. If the weather is a bit cooler and that Merc's in a better operating window, I'll give Russell third, and that'll be my top 3. But if it rains, if it's cloudy, if it's... we spoke about the weather earlier, but that can flip it on its head. But whatever happens, I know it'll be a good race. I'm excited.
Harry, your quick top 3, quicker than Kieran's, because that won't work quite.
Norris, Piastri, Verstappen.
You said that quite like sad.
Still clinging on.
Yeah, holding on.
Well,
I'm gonna go with, and this is rogue because it's like my aspirational prediction, Lewis Hamilton, P1, Lando Norris in second, George Russell in third, Alex Albon, an honorary, he is British, but he doesn't compete, in fourth, Ollie Behrman, the Chelmsford lad, in fifth. Everybody else has crashed out. Pandemonium.
That's the only way that's happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lewis is like fifth,
Yeah, that's
or
it.
like there's like 5 drivers in front of him that would be more likely to win. You know, like he's yeah. I mean, it began a cool, but God,
Elliot, if that result happens,
He
I'll
wa-
drink a bottle of sours with Harry
Yeah.
on
All
that
right.
day. If this result happens
He
next
won
week.
last year against all odds, so you never know. We'll
never
go
know.
into
You never
we'll go into
Yeah,
our
true.
final thoughts. Kieran, you kick us off.
My final thoughts are the championship race isn't over. It's going to be a lot more hotly contested than maybe we thought 3 or 4 weeks ago when Piastri was threatening to look to start to run away. So I'm excited for the championship battle, and I hope it keeps up this quality of racing, quality of entertainment throughout. That's my final thought.
Harry, your final thoughts?
Yeah, I love Austria. It's a great country and a great racetrack. It really delivered. So hopefully next week is just as good.
Oh, well, that was pleasant, and it will be because we're going to have 15 cars crash out. My
Exactly.
my final thought is a moan. My final thought is a moan. So I have not seen the F1
Wow.
movie, and I'm not going to, quite frankly.
Okay, good. Because I was going to say no spoilers, but I will be
Oh.
watching it.
Oh, well, I hear it's incredibly sexist. And Harry, you can feed
Well,
back on.
come on, F1. I mean,
You can feed back on
it's
that.
all men there. I mean,
Well,
True,
there's
true to life.
there's a high female, like
Yeah.
technical director or something like that, and she's like really good at her job.
yes.
And she's highly respected. She's good at what she does. Like, she brings a lot of insight, and then for no reason she has a one night stand with
It's just
Brad
not
Pitt.
realistic. I'm sorry. I mean,
Like, she wastes she
amazing.
I've not seen the film, but my understanding of it is like she potentially like wastes her whole career or like jeopardizes her whole career for a one night stand with Brad Pitt.
Just sleep with Brad Pitt.
And it's not even
I mean,
like a
fair
proper
play.
relationship, it's just a one night stand. So, yeah, a lot of people are watching it, and not just women are watching it and moaning, but men are watching it and moaning and saying it wasn't a good representation of females in the sport. In the last like few years, we've seen so much movement in this direction where we've got
True.
females
Okay,
who
but
are,
Ellie,
yeah,
we've got. I mean, I hate to cut off women mid-speech, but we've all I'm hearing is there was a representation of a high-ranking, technical director who happened to be a woman and seemed good at her job or whatever. I assume it's like an underdog story. They probably end up winning or whatever. So, that's great. And we're seeing women come into these roles and doing a fantastic job. We don't know what goes on behind closed doors. We've joked about what's her face, Angela shacking up with Lewis Hamilton. That could be happening. So, who's to say? Who's to say?
who's to say? Well,
Well,
But
I will
expected
add,
nothing
Harry,
less
that from what I've also read about
this
it,
movie.
from having not watched it either, but from also what I've heard about it, it is the fact that this is a bit of a spoiler if anyone's watching. It is the fact that Brad Pitt basically comes in and says, "No woman, you're wrong," and she changes the entire car design, and suddenly it's a great car in one day. So that bit, I think,
That's exactly
an
what
entire
I thought it would be,
quite a prominent actress, Simone Ashley, of Bridgerton fame,
Yes.
was cut out of the movie entirely.
yeah, and she's
So
still
quite a major actress
Yeah.
who assumedly would have had a good storyline,
She was
entirely cut from the movie.
Wasn't she playing a female driver? Her role was.
I don't know that, but I just know that her entire whatever it was, whatever
no
it was,
wonder
it never
no
made
wonder
the cut.
she was
so.
cut.
Yeah. So I think
They'll make a director streaming movie about her in the F1 Academy.
Yeah.
That's true to
Yeah.
life. Just put it on some backboard.
Yeah.
But I
streaming
think
service.
the sport
That's a
has
shame because she's
changed.
good. She's a great actress.
Harry's just seen her like in Bridgerton, and it's like she's fantastic. She didn't have many clothes on, but it was fantastic.
She's amazing. She lights up the screen, Ellie. Okay, she's a
All
great
right.
actress.
We're getting sidetracked. Let me finish
I've
my
seen her in
point.
another movie as well. It was a terrible movie, but she was good.
Harry, let the women speak, okay? This is
Yeah.
Woman's Hour on BBC Radio 4. I think that the way the sport has moved in the last few years, there's a lot more female fans. I've been a fan since I was a kid, and I didn't really know any other girls who were into Formula One. And now it's more common for females, for women and girls to watch Formula One, and I can have conversations with other people about Formula One, and it's great. And I think it's a weird time that this has come out, especially as Formula One is so connected with this film. It's not somebody's made a film about Formula One. It's kind of Formula One have gone and made a film. And like Lewis Hamilton was heavily involved with it. He's a producer on it. It just seems weird that it's been kind of allowed to happen. And as I say, I've not seen the film, but so many people are coming forward and saying the same thing. If the shoe fits, maybe it is a bit of a sexist film. So I'm probably not going to watch it, but then I guess if I don't watch it, maybe I can't have an opinion on it. I don't know, but I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
And I think
thanks for feeding back, because that's I will watch it, so I'll let you know.
Yeah. Okay. We'll have a little segment once you've seen it.
But he'll watch it with his arms crossed. Yeah. Now he's going to sit there with his arm crossed the whole time, going. Just so everyone knows what side he's on, so it's okay.
Yeah. And then at the end he's going to go like, "Women don't want to sleep with Brad Pitt," or maybe
Wow.
He's getting on a bit now. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. He's getting on a bit. Rumors about him aren't nice. Anyway, we'll move on.
He's kind of a dickhead. I mean,
Harry, language.
Yeah.
Sorry. You can cut that out. He's
cut that bit out.
Kind of a prick. Is that better? Can I say?
I'll allow it. Oh.
Okay. He's a wife beater. Can I say that? Or is
you might get done for libel. Yeah.
Okay. Take that one out. Cut that one out.
Well.
Yeah. We've got way off topic now, and I'm going to wrap it up before we get in any more trouble and we end up being sued. Thank you for listening, if indeed you still are. Sorry about the rant at the end. Join us next time as we break down Silverstone, one of the best races on the calendar. Hopefully it's a good race, and hopefully we see you next week on Real Winging It, the Formula One podcast. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.